Good morning. Today we are continuing on with those triangles. We are working on CO56. I can use the Pythagorean theorem. Now this theorem, Pythagorean theorem, we are going to see in the future. This is something that we need to understand. We're being introduced to it in Math 6, but we will see it later in the future. So this is something that we need to get a decent understanding of. One of the oldest and most famous formulas in mathematics is the Pythagorean theorem. Its use is traced all the way back to 1900 BC, before Christ. So this is really old math. But it's named after Pythagoras, a teacher and philosopher for around the time of 500 BC. So still a long time ago. The Pythagorean theorem is used to find an unknown side length in a right triangle. So we use this when we know it has a right angle, and it can help us find side lengths. First, it's important to know the parts of the right triangle. So we need to know the parts of that right triangle. There are words that we use. When we have a right triangle, we have the right angle right here. One side of the right angle we call A. The other side of the right angle we call the B. So A and B are the legs of that right triangle. They are what make up the two sides that make up the right angle. Then across from that right angle is the C. So we have a leg and we have a leg. Directly, the side directly across from the right angle is always the C, and that is called our hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is directly across from the right angle. So on the test, if you see a question that says, how do you know which one is the hypotenuse? You say it's the side that's directly across from the right angle. Spoiler, you're going to see that question. Seriously, that's the question that almost every student gets wrong. They forget how to find the hypotenuse. It is directly across from the right angle. Okay, the C, the hypotenuse. I'm kind of giving you an answer here. You will see that again. The two legs make up the right angle. The hypotenuse is directly across from the angle. So the Pythagorean theorem always looks like this. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. How many of us have heard that before? I heard a couple people whispering it as I was saying it. How many of us knew it was called the Pythagorean theorem? Nice. Okay. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We will see this again and again. What does it mean when we square something? Emma?
It's basically times it by itself.
Yeah, you times it by itself. So that would be A times A plus B times B, and that equals C times C. So remember, when we square, we do not multiply it by 2. We multiply it by itself. So A times A, B times B. Then you add them together, and that equals C squared. How do you think we find out what C is? Good guess. We don't divide, so if it's, let's say 81, we wouldn't divide it by 81. But you're on the right track with what you're thinking, Lila. What do you think, Emma?
We divide it by like the multiple of it, like 81 divided by 9.
Why 9?
Oh, because that's what it goes into.
Yeah. So 9 times 9 is 81. It's the perfect square. So what's the opposite of squaring something? Remember, it's that symbol. Anybody remember what that symbol's called, Lila? The square root. So in order to go from c squared to just to c, we have to find the square root. And Emma explained what that is. What number times itself would equal it. So it's really hard if you don't know what that number is. It's hard to know what to divide it by. If I say 225, what's its square root? Some of us might know that it's 15, but a lot of us will go, ooh, I'm not sure. So on your calculator, you would put in that 225 and do that square root button. So I'm going to show us, I'm going to remind us how to do that with today's lesson. So the big thing to know is what our legs are. The legs are the two sides that make up the right angle. So that's always the A and the B. A and B make the right angle. The hypotenuse is directly across from that right angle. That's the hypotenuse, the C. So A and B are the legs. They make our right angle. And then we have C is the line that's directly across from the right angle. That's the hypotenuse. Important to know the letters. Also important to know their names. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared is leg squared times leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So let's see how we work with this information. First, we're going to prove that the theorem works with these examples. So if our theorem is A squared plus B squared equals C squared, how would I write that using these sides? What would it look like, James?
3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared.
So we're using easier numbers with this one so we can see how it works. We're going to work out our math using order of operations. Remember, PERMDAS, parentheses, and then no parentheses here, but the next is exponents. That squaring is exponents. So what is 3 squared? James?
6.
Nope, that's 3 times 2. 3 squared would be what, Kylie? 9. 3 times 3. So we have 9 plus what is 4 squared? Liam?
16.
16. 4 times 4 is 16. And what is 5 squared? Sophie? 25. So then you look, 9 plus 16 is 25. 25 truly does equal 25. So for this one, we're just proving that it works. Same thing with the next one. We're going to prove that it works. What am I going to write for my equation? I have a side of 25, a side of 7, and a side of 24. How would I write that, Emma?
Oh, it would be 7 squared plus 24 squared equals 25.
Because our A and our B are the sides that make up that right angle, and then that C, that hypotenuse, is directly across from that right angle. So 7 squared is what? Lila?
49.
What is 24 squared? Sarah?
576.
And what is 25 squared? Liam?
645.
So 49 plus 576 is 625. 625 truly does equal 625. So for that, we're just proving that it works, but it's not showing us how to actually use the theorem to find that missing side. So let's look to see how we would use this so we can see that it works, given different examples. Any examples we put on there, we could show that it works. So now, let's practice using it. So again, I'm just gonna write it up here, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I have my first triangle here. I have a side of 5, a side of 12, and then an unknown side. So how am I going to write out my equation to solve for that unknown side? Sophie? Because first thing we want to do is we want to fill in which numbers we know, if they're A, B, or C. So we know that the two sides that make up that right angle are our legs, that's the A and the B. So 5 squared plus 12 squared equals, that's our unknown side. It's directly across from the right angle, so it's our C, our hypotenuse. So when I write it here, I don't just put a C. What do I have to put? Got it? Yeah, it's C squared. Because A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Super important that we remember that that C is squared. So now let's do the math that we can do. What is 5 squared? Bridget? 25. What is 12 squared? Kylie? 144. And that equals C squared. What do you think my next math should be that I need to do? Maddie? 25 plus 144, what is that, Maddie? What is it? Oh, you're doing it? Okay. 169, and that equals C squared. Am I done? Is my answer 169? Why not, Lila? I have to find the square root. So I find the square root of C squared, and that's going to be C. Now I need to find the square root of 169. So let me get my calculator so you can see how to do that. Just a reminder of how to find a square root on the calculator. So the first thing we do is we look for that square root picture on our calculator, and it's actually on the calculator, not on the button that has x squared. So to get to that, we do that second button, and then that square root button. And we can see on the calculator that square root symbol. So the first thing you do is you get that square root on your calculator, and then you type in your number that you want to find the square root of, 169. Press equals, and we can see that it's 13. So the square root of 169 is 13. So there are some of us who have been using my calculators in the box in the back. I don't know, I don't think those calculators have the square root button. I'm not 100%. If you don't have your calculator, you need to get one. Okay? Make sure you bring it from home. Make sure you have your calculator for class. So our final answer to that square root of 169 was that 13. You're going to do the same thing for these two triangles. How do I know which one is the right angle? So I can know which ones make up the legs and which ones is the hypotenuse. Emma?
It's the angle that's between
So we're not always going to be just given the two legs. Sometimes you could be given a hypotenuse and a leg, and you have to solve for the other leg. Yeah, the one that makes that corner. Okay, the one that looks like 90 degrees. A lot of times they'll put that little square symbol in there so we know that's the 90-degree angle. If you are given the hypotenuse and you have to solve for a leg, you just fill in the numbers that you know and you do the opposite operations to solve for that leg. These two both have right angles, so they're a little bit easier. And then we have a word problem. A rope is fastened to a tree 8 feet from the ground. So our tree is how tall? So that rope is fastened right here. We know that length is 8 feet. And then it's in a stake that's 6 feet away from the tree. So look at our picture. Now look at our triangle. We have one side, we have another side, and then we have this side. So we know one side is 8 feet, one side is 6 feet. Our right angle is right there. So if we want to find the length of our rope, you need to find your missing side, just like we did in those triangles up above. So it's telling us what our picture looks like. We need to see what that triangle looks like, which measurements we know, solve for the measurement that we don't know. Any questions on this? Helen? I did have Mrs. Feynman borrow them. I don't know if she's brought them back yet. So you should have your own calculator. And if she hasn't brought them back yet, I will call to see if she can have somebody deliver them. But you do need your own calculator. It was on our supply list. So then you need to ask mom and dad for a new one. You're going to need this calculator for 7th and 8th grade. So if you can't find yours, it needs to be replaced. You have to have a big kid calculator for this. Any questions on the assignment? If you want to check if you did it correctly, you can bring it up over to me during our work time. Remember, if you finish the assignment, work on Khan Academy, work on packet number 9. Khan is due on Thursday, packet 9 is due Friday. So if you want to be able to redo any of those pages, you have to turn it in to me by Thursday. If you are watching at home, I hope you are well, and I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.